Hello, freak bitches. Now, the blowback from this has been very intriguing, as an outsider, looking at it. When I first heard about it, I thought, well, this mean, angry man must have written some things saying that women suck at tech or they suck at this, and people were reacting to this blatant misogynistic scribe that I was hearing about. When I read it, I was so confused because I was like, "Where's the mean stuff? Like, where is this?" And you also think the other thing that was really confusing was that some people were reprinting it without citations.
Right.
Did that freak you out? Like when you're being misrepresented?
Yeah, especially when people would say, "Oh, it was so unscientific because it didn't have citations."
Right.
And that was their entire argument.
Who did it? Who printed it without citations? Because some major publications republished it.
Yeah, I think it was Gizmodo or Motherboard or something.
Why the fuck would they do that without citations? It seems so unreasonable and so irresponsible.
I think a lot of these companies just have a certain narrative that they're trying to push.
Yeah.
And so like even, I've tried to talk to a lot of these reporters, and I'll give hour-long interviews with some of them, and at the end they'll just write the same sort of article of like, oh yeah, he's just a misogynist.
Yeah.
And so I think even if I can convince the individual journalist, they are under pressure by their boss to write a certain type of article.
God, what a weird world we're in right now when it comes to that. Because I was looking for something that could be like evidence of misogyny. The only thing that I could find, and this is a very mild criticism, is that you were saying, I believe you used the term neurotic, that women were more likely to be neurotic.
Oh, neuroticism.
Yeah. That's one where a lot of women go, well, fuck this guy. But that's it. That's all. I mean, but what did you base that on?
Yeah, so there's the psychological big five personality traits, and neuroticism is just one of them.
Right.
So that's the actual term that they use, and it's sort of unfortunate that that's a term.
Yeah. But it's that one. I feel like maybe you could have danced around that a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's it.
I think it's just I was too much into I've seen the word so often that I didn't really associate it with neurotic and the negative connotations.
Yeah. Well, I've seen a bunch of your conversations. I've listened to you talk to Ben Shapiro and a couple other folks. And, your thought process is very reasonable and very well sorted out. And another thing that I'm not hearing from anybody is how you wrote a whole page and a half describing all the different ways that women could be more involved in tech, or you can encourage more women into tech. Like, this is not the work of a misogynist. This is the work of someone who's carefully considering an issue and looking at it from a very, what I felt like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that you felt frustrated that you were looking at something that was that people, the way they're approaching this was, they weren't looking at it for what it was. They had kind of decided how they were going to describe it and how they were going to deal with it, and it wasn't really based on facts or reality, and certainly not on science. And you sort of felt frustrated by this, and you decided to try to interject with as much of the current science as you could that could possibly explain choices. Yeah. Not why women are bad at it, not why they shouldn't be in it, which is what I kept reading, but more that why women choose to go into certain professions, what could be the impediment, and what we could do to maybe encourage more women to do it instead of doing this sort of blanket style diversity where you're just like, oh, we need two of these and we need two of those, which is what I seem to think that they were doing. Is that a good assessment?
Yeah.
By the way, this will never trend on YouTube. We might get 5 million hits. That's a real problem too. Like, there's a lot of censorship when it comes to these sort of conversations. Like, they would rather look at me, who looks like a meathead, and look at you and go, oh, well, these fucking guys are just talking shit about women for an hour. You know what I mean? Right? I mean, do you feel that?
Definitely. And you'll be labeled alt-right now. And
I've already been labeled alt-right. It doesn't matter how many left-wing positions I support. I look alt-right.
Yeah, which is obviously like sexist
Yeah,
and
for sure. Misogynist, racist, all that stuff. Yeah.
well, but I mean, just labeling us because we're white men or
Yes.
something, a certain label because that it's.
Yeah, it's prejudice.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. But people don't mind prejudices in that regard. You know, they only like they have an issue with prejudices when it comes to what they feel like are disenfranchised or you know, marginalized people. But white people, fuck them. You know, you can't.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thought process, right? You can't be racist towards white people. So, like, what are the most egregious things? Like, what are the most ridiculous things they were trying to push when you were at these classes or meetings?
So, I mean, besides the fact of just certain things in our hiring process that would favor certain people, which would create negative stereotypes for people just in general. So, like, one thing about stereotypes that they don't realize is that, you know, people will automatically create stereotypes no matter what, and it's based on their environment. So, and we see this with affirmative action too in academia, where if you create a sort of situation where portions of the population are performing differently, then you'll automatically create the stereotype that, oh, maybe all the Asians are smart and all of the other minorities aren't as smart in this college, right? Because you needed a 1600 to get in if you're Asian, and you need lower otherwise. And so you'll automatically create that stereotype, and that's negative for everyone because, you know, it creates this tension between the groups, and they self-segregate because of that. While if you just put everyone at the same level, then they'll just intermingle and it'll be great. And so, you know, that has its negative consequences, and it may be illegal, which is what I was trying to say in my document. So that aspect I think is bad. But then also, you know, once you think that, oh, all of this is because of sexism, and even though we can't really see overt signs of sexism, like, oh yeah, you're a woman, therefore you're bad, and no one is saying these sexist slurs or anything, then it must be some low-level bias that we all have. And that's why they're pushing all this unconscious bias and microaggressions and just increasing everyone's sensitivity to, oh, you said something that could be interpreted in this one weird way, and that might offend someone somewhere. Therefore, you should never say anything. And it's really stifling.
Well, I think we would all agree that we would all be better off if we treated people nicer.
Yeah.
You know, if we didn't have racism, if we didn't have sexism, we just appreciated people for their qualities and just could be very objective about that. But when I would imagine that when you're running a company as large as something like Google, you kind of have to put fires out before you even see smoke.
Right.
And like the writing's on the wall when it comes to criticism today, and anything that people can point to when it's whether it's a percentage of women, a percentage of minorities, whatever it is, where that they feel like is off. I mean, people will write articles about this. It can damage your stock profile, you know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it can like companies can take a hit on the stock market because of an article that someone could write about a lack of diversity. Like, oh, geez, they got a lack of diversity. Like, that's a real issue.
Yeah, and
right?
There have been reports of companies that'll have these diversity programs and then blackmail companies if they don't take them. So say, you know, they'll start complaining because, you know, all of these companies are the same in that they have about, you know, 20 to 30% women. So they could do the same attack against anyone. And so they blackmail a company, say, oh, you need to do these certain programs, and if you don't, then we'll start doing external pressure on you.
So who are the companies that are blackmailing them?
Yes.
Or the groups?
At least from what I've heard, and this is all secondhand, it's a lot of the programs so they'll hire contractors to perform some of the diversity programs.